March 31st, 2019 was another typical spring day in South Central Los Angeles. But by that afternoon, the community would lose one of its heroes to the very violence that he was trying to escape from himself. Around 3 o'clock that afternoon, following alleged accusations of snitching, Eric Holder Jr. shot and killed rapper Nipsey Hussle, riddling his body with more than 10 bullets. It's a tragedy that not only rocked Hussle's family and friends, but the hip-hop community and South Central LA, where Hussle believed entrepreneurship could be a pathway for many people to escape the violence that was plaguing the area. Court TV crime and justice reporter Matt Johnson was working as a reporter and anchor in Los Angeles at the time and was covering the events that unfolded that day and afterwards. He is joining us here in the studio today to talk more about the Nipsey Hussle case. Matt, good to see you.
Pleasure to be here with you, Julie.
Let's start with you just taking us back to that scene. Like, what was your day like when you got sent there with your photographer, and then tell us what happened after that occurred, please.
It's like a typical Sunday, and you're working local news, so I may have been picking up a couple stories, you know, maybe something community oriented, and then we get a call on the scanner from our assignment desk, and, you know, there's been a shooting, South Central. Typically, we don't go to every single shooting, but we're hearing word that it's in front of the Marathon store, owned by Nipsey Hussle. We know this. And some of the media outlets are already starting to report that it could be the rapper himself that has been shot. So we arrive, and I'm telling you, it is one of the largest crime scenes that I have seen in my career, because it expanded for blocks and blocks in this area. It was hard to get like a clear shot of where the police activity was for the investigation.
Oh, wow. Did people start just kind of converging on the parking lot of the Marathon store? And like, what was that like? I mean, how quickly did a crowd start forming?
Almost immediately. We arrived, and we were probably one of the first stations to be there, but everybody arrived within minutes. But as soon as I got out of the live truck, people were starting to tell us, you know, it's Nipsey who died. People were crying. I was grabbing interviews, and they were telling me that they had seen someone jet away in a white car. Didn't know the significance at that time, but there was already people starting to gather. And that turned into hundreds of people by the end of the night, thousands of people nightly for almost an entire week.
Wow.
Yeah, it was big.
I mean, huge. And, you know, and on any given day, like you said, when you're reporting and, you know, you have very little information sometimes at the outset, but who would have thought, right, this story would get that big? As soon as you probably started hearing the buzz that it might have been Nipsey Hussle who was shot and killed, it just changed everything, didn't it? It
changed everything, and I think that that's part of the reason why the crime scene was so big. You had 3 people shot, 1 that was killed, 1 died on the scene, well, taken and then died later, Nipsey Hussle. This happened on a Sunday, just a typical Sunday afternoon. No one really thought, but he was so in tune with the community and such a big part of the community. The fact that it happened there, I feel like people knew right away, and that's why you saw people coming out with the flowers and crying, and you know, it was just, it became something in itself, in the grieving and not knowing why.
Oh, sure. I mean, and to say that he's beloved, you know, at this time, 2019, I mean, he is so beloved in that community. That's probably an understatement. But so I guess to kind of put it all into great perspective for everyone watching, there are people who I'm sure loved his raps, who might live in another part of the country but not have any idea of all the great work he was doing there in the Crenshaw area.
He was a man of the community.
Yeah.
People were able to go into his store and say hello. He would be there. Wow. He chose to be an entrepreneur, and he owned several businesses in that very small strip mall in the Crenshaw area. On purpose. He grew up there. He survived gang life. He decided to turn his life around, and that's how he and Mr. Holder knew each other, was from gang life. He employed other people that left the gang life to work in his shop, and we're seeing some of those people testify.
Exactly, Matt. You know, I was chatting a little while ago with our field producer, Adrian, our colleague, and we were talking about how we would love to show the whole trial
of course.
to America,
Yeah.
you know, but I mean, this is serious stuff that, you know, people are afraid of not coming out of this case alive, depending on what they say and if their name is publicly put out there, their face. And so I think it's wonderful that the judge is considering, you know, this is serious stuff and we don't need anyone else to wind up dead, God forbid, or seriously injured.
Because there's not even a sketch artist, right?
Yeah, no.
Because they don't want these people to feel like they're identifiable in order to be a target and the next target. And I'm sure that a lot of people in this community feel that they could be if they share the wrong bit of information. I mean, when you think of the word snitch, for most of us, that doesn't mean anything, but it's the heart of what this trial is about, right? Like, and you know that, you're a former prosecutor, so you know that that is unfortunately a deadly word to say to somebody.
Oh, it is, absolutely. And even Adrian was sharing with us how there's a lot of difficulty that the state is having in getting witnesses, getting them to come to court, you know, and as a prosecutor, oftentimes, you know what happened, you know how you need to prove it, but it's very difficult to prove it if people are petrified to come and testify. And that's understandable too. I get it. And as much as we would like to see this playing out in real time, you know, we have to abide by the rules of the court. You know, how, I guess, when you were there, going back to that day and the scene, how fresh was it? Like, was there even crime scene tape up? I mean, it's my understanding you were the first reporter there.
I was, Matt. And the crime scene kept on expanding wider and wider as the shooter, we would later find out, Mr. Holder, we didn't find out right away that he was the suspect. You know, that took days.
Right.
This was all just, who shot Nipsey? Why would anyone shoot him? He's not a gang member right now. Right. You know, I mean, like, he's turning the community around. That's when I tweeted on the 2nd of April, so it's been a couple days. That's when police, Los Angeles Police Department, they are now giving us a picture of the name, and it's an all-out manhunt. I'm sure they were receiving so many tips of people thinking that they saw him because everyone wanted this crime solved and someone to be held accountable.
Oh, absolutely. Certainly understandable. And if police say they've got their guy, prosecutors are convinced they've got their guy. We know we've got the defense team conceding, yeah, Holder's the guy. They're just arguing the legality of it and the legal responsibility, saying a shooting in the heat of passion versus a premeditated murder, which the state of California says it was. Matt, you've been following it really closely. Tell us about some of the key witnesses. For somebody who hasn't seen any of this yet, who are the key witnesses whose testimony the state's got to have in order to prove this went down the way they say it did?
Right, and Adrian kind of talked about that a little bit. You know, she's there in the courtroom, she's our eyes and ears, you know. But two people stood out to me. One of which was one of his employees that turned his life around. He kind of considered him a little brother. I'm referring to Nipsey as a little brother. And that was a guy that refers to himself as Cowboy. So that's his street name, and this is part of what he mentioned in court. Nipsey said that he was there with some paperwork floating around. He's talking to Holder. You have to take care of it. You did some talking. You need to address it. The word snitch never came up. That's what he says up there on the stand. Black and white don't lie. And he kind of talks about that, and that's so important because Nipsey was trying to help him, allegedly, by taking care of some business with law enforcement. That's what was being presented by prosecutors in court. So that's important. And so Cowboy was there during all of this. He said he didn't think anything of it, the exchange between the two men. They all knew each other. They all grew up together. Seemed to be pretty civil. He walks back into the store because he works for Nipsey. Then he hears the gunshots. And remember, he was shot 10 times.
Which is going to be very hard, I think, for the defense to get around. Right. I'm sure you do too, Matt. You've got how many trials? I mean, you know, the shooting and then what we both know transpired after the fact, and this is very upsetting, the allegation is that he then kicked him.
In the head, yeah,
in the head. So
these are, of course, things that we didn't know when we're reporting on it. From a distance, the crime scene tape is growing it further out. It spanned for blocks, but when we were closer to the scene, we could see the evidence markers down there on the ground in front. It was local news that got that surveillance video that they're presenting in court.
Oh, wow.
We were first to release that because it was a gas station and it had a clear shot to the parking lot.
Oh, yeah. That video is huge evidence for the state. We were looking at it earlier in the show. I mean, just huge, seeing the car there and how police were able to track down Eric Holder as their suspect.
And that's the other key witness, I think, in the case, too, is the alleged getaway driver of the car, that white car that, remember, witnesses were telling me, they said, sped off. So she wasn't a girlfriend, but...
Yeah, she was involved, right? Yeah. Testified to being involved, and Adrian shared with us that she gave testimony with immunity from prosecution. This is her, right? Nina Nicholson. That's her. That's the car you were talking about that those witnesses you spoke with said they saw.
And this was some of her testimony there on the stand too. I was going through social media. I heard gunshots. I was about to go, meaning go back to the scene or go to police. I remember Holder, who she was with, told me to wait. And I don't know what was going on. He came back to the car. He told me to drive. She went on to say, and this is a conversation back and forth with prosecutors. He says, "What do you think?" She says, "Oh my gosh." I was like, I didn't think that he did it. And then he says, "Did it occur that Eric shot Nipsey?" She goes on to say, "Yeah, from hearing it from other people, but I didn't know for sure." It was her mother who convinced her to go to police, and that happened several days later. Again, everyone's looking for the car. We don't know who Holder is. He's not named a suspect for a couple days after, but it's all becoming very clear in this timeline in court.
Right, Matt. Her testimony was absolutely key. I can see why the state would give her immunity for that, because with absolute certainty, she can identify him. She puts him there, you know, and so sometimes, you know, you've got to make those deals, as you know. Somebody gets something in exchange for the testimony to help bring justice to Nipsey Hussle's family. One other thing I want to hit on, because I feel like it can't be emphasized enough, is what he meant to that community, what he meant to South Central LA, because he was so much bigger than just his raps and his music. And don't get me wrong, you know, I mean, he left a legacy with that in the music industry, but it seemed like more importantly to him was what he did, you know, with his life and turning it around, setting an example, living that example. And what did you hear? Yeah,
he lived multiple lives, right? Like, he was only 33 years old. He had 2 very small children. He was dating an actress, actress Lauren London. I reached out to her family just yesterday, and I said, "Are you in court?" You know, that's before, you know, we checked in with Adrian today, and they said that no, but thank you for asking. And they said, quote, you know, they're still grieving. It's still very painful. I can only imagine. His son, they share a son together, 5 years old now, his daughter 13. But after all of this happened, now you have an arrest. Several days later, he, you know, gets 2 Grammys, you know, honored with those. And there was also a big event that was held at the Staples Center. Everyone knows how big that is, like that's where the Lakers play, all that stuff. And there were other rappers and other Grammy winners that sang and paid tribute there. That's where his family spoke, and that's pretty much the last time we heard from the family, I believe. But he also left a legacy within the music community itself, and I spoke with one of our friends over at Variety, and here's what he had to share.
As an entrepreneur, as a representative for his community, as someone who wanted to give back to his neighborhood, you know, and the place where he grew up. That is really almost what he is best known for and most revered for. He was an excellent rapper, don't get me wrong there, but he was different.
He was different and beloved by everybody. Here's a tweet that I did when we were covering the funeral procession. By now, you have media from across the globe that are there. There are thousands of people lining the street, just lining the street. It's wall-to-wall people. And everyone crying tears, trying to touch the hearse itself. That was so important to everybody. That's after that big funeral that was held over at the Staples Center. And then the community has to deal with another big loss because that was the day that Kobe died.
Oh my gosh. That context really helps too. You know, this is a community really shaken up that gets then shaken up once again. Grieving one loss, grieving another loss, you know, it's...
Losing leaders, community members, role models.
He was a role model.
Yeah.
And you know, our hearts go out to his family, his kids, and obviously they have a lot to be proud of with their dad, and we'll keep following this trial as it progresses and see if justice is done for Nipsey Hussle and for his family. Matt Johnson, can't thank you enough for sharing all of this, having your perspective on it. I mean, it's invaluable. Thank you kindly.